Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is TVP World. You're watching World News Tonight. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee. Poland is celebrating the anniversary of the Gdańsk Agreement, a pivotal moment in the path towards democracy in Central Europe. We'll have more on that in just a minute, but first, let's take a look at the headlines. Crucial elections are underway in the German states of Saxony and Thuringia. Ukraine's president dismissed the country's Air Force commander just days after an F-16 crash. Poland's Róża Kozakowska disqualified, losing both her Paralympic gold medal and world record. 44 years ago, protesting workers at the Gdańsk shipyard compelled the communist regime to strike a deal, leading to what became known as the Gdańsk Agreement. This agreement paved the way for the creation of the Solidarity movement and ultimately the fall of communism. Our reporter Kazimierz Wyszak is in Gdańsk right now. Kazimierz, how significant is this day for the Polish nation?
Good evening. Well, this day is very significant to all Poles. Doesn't matter what side of the political spectrum they're on. This is something which unites all of Poland. The Solidarity movement was made possible only because of the Gdańsk Agreement and the huge protests which took place right here. Right now we are standing in front of the gate, the so-called Solidarity Gate in Gdańsk. This is the gate of the Gdańsk shipyard. Here is where thousands of workers protested and ultimately gave way for the Gdańsk Agreement, which brought about the Solidarity movement. We still have people coming here with flowers, laying them in front of the gate. This is truly a very special place and a very special date for all of Poles. Polish President Andrzej Duda came here to Gdańsk to honor these events and all those people who fought for the freedom of Poland. And he emphasized that while these protests, this movement began right here in Gdańsk, then it spread all over the country. Let's listen.
Ta solidarność.
The movement began with these strikes in the Gdańsk shipyard. They ignited here in Gdańsk through the strike in the Gdańsk shipyard, and those that came after resulted in the creation of the Intercompany Strike Committee. The strikes that supported this movement throughout Poland later ended in further agreements. The Szczecin one, the Jastrzębie one, the Dąbrowa one.
Now, there was also another great way that these events were commemorated. The Polish government came here for a special session of the government. Usually, of course, these take place in Warsaw, in the Polish capital, but to honor these events, Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk came here with his ministers to hold this session of the government. Let's listen to what he had to say on this day.
We are the government of the Republic of Poland today, and Ms. Mayor is the mayor of the city of Gdańsk. Precisely because then, 44 years ago, the shipyard workers, the workers of Gdańsk, the Tri-City, and later all of Poland, but also people of culture, the intelligentsia, decided to do this great uprising.
So, like I said, this is a very important day for all of Poland. This is something which unites us all. And, well, these celebrations were truly something to witness here in Gdańsk. This is also a great opportunity to come to Gdańsk to witness these events. If you ever want to visit Poland, this is a good time to do so. You can truly see how the Solidarity movement inspires Poles still today. Now, tomorrow we will be having the commemorations of the outbreak of the Second World War, also here in Gdańsk, so be on the lookout for those, as I will be bringing you the latest updates here from Gdańsk. Back to you, Ben.
All right, then keep us posted. Meanwhile, appreciate it. Thanks so much. High-stake elections are fast approaching in the German states of Saxony and Thuringia. For the first time since World War II, a far-right party is poised to win regional elections.
Centrist CDU and far-right AfD are running neck and neck in both Saxony and Thuringia. In Saxony, the CDU is narrowly leading by 3 points, so within the statistical error margin. In Thuringia, the AfD has a comfortable lead of 6 percentage points.
The biggest concern I have at the moment is that the fronts are hardening and that there is little dialogue between the parties.
People are worried about the direction Saxony is going and hoping that everyone will go to the polls.
The AfD is a pro-Russian, anti-immigration party, running on a platform of ending military aid to Ukraine and turning away refugees. Its members have been involved in numerous scandals, including the violation of Germany's ban on the use of Nazi slogans.
The AfD is a party which unites votes of those who think that they cannot find a result by voting for any other party.
Experts attribute AfD's popularity partially to voter dissatisfaction with lack of change regardless of the outcome of the election. Former Chancellor Angela Merkel was able to remain in power for 16 years thanks to CDU forming coalitions with Social Democrats and the Free Democratic Party.
Merkel demonstrated that you can be not happy with her, you can be not happy with Social Democrats, or with Liberals, or with anyone. You vote for any party, but you will get Merkel as a chancellor.
Another party capitalizing on voter dissatisfaction is the Sarah Wagenknecht Alliance. Wagenknecht founded her party less than a year ago, but it is expected to come third in the upcoming elections. The far-left party advocates for ending military aid to Ukraine and promises higher pensions, better schools, better jobs, and less immigration.
Somebody was keen on voting on Die Linke or the Social Democrats, but was unhappy with the current stance on my soft stance on migration policy, then the union of Sarah Wagenknecht is a perfect pick for such a person.
Thuringians and Saxonians are due to cast their ballots on Sunday.
During the latest Russian attack, the Ukrainian air defense shot down 24 Shahed drones, with another 25 losing communication and crashing. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg voiced support for Kyiv as it continues to defend itself against Russia's relentless assaults.
7 people died and nearly 100 more were wounded after a Russian airstrike targeted Kharkiv in Ukraine's northeast. Among them was a 14-year-old girl.
Her name was Sofia. She was so smart, so beautiful. My younger granddaughter asked me if Sofia was okay. I told her that everything was fine. How do you tell a kid that she no longer has a sister?
People rushed to take shelter after 5 Russian-guided bombs rained down on Kharkiv, launched from Belgorod, just 25 kilometers from the border. Several locations were hit.
We were at home when we heard a powerful whistle, followed by an explosion. I thought that something flew into our house because I saw a column of smoke rising.
Just hours later, President Zelensky renewed calls on Western allies to allow long-range attacks on Russian targets. He argued the attacks would not have happened if Ukraine's defense forces could strike Russian missiles and aircraft in the first place.
We need our partners to make concrete decisions. I mean, our partners who can decide whether or not we can destroy Russian military aircraft right where they are based. We need to strike precisely and effectively.
Kharkiv has been the focus of heavy Russian bombing throughout the war, although there had been a drop in intensity in recent weeks, possibly related to the surprise incursion launched by Ukrainian forces into Russia's Kursk region. Ukraine's incursion has since slowed down, but its troops still continue to hold a chunk of Russian soil.
Combat actions of varying intensity are taking place along the entire front line. The most difficult situation remains in the Pokrov sector.
Ukraine's incursion into Russia's Kursk region is legitimate and covered by Kyiv's right to self-defense. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg told German weekly Welt am Sonntag. This is the first official comment from NATO on the Ukrainian cross-border incursion, first launched on August 6th.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has replaced the commander of Ukraine's Air Force after a high-profile plane crash earlier this week. Our Ukraine correspondent, Oz Katerji, is joining us live from Kyiv with more details. Oz, what can you tell us about the dismissal of the previous commander?
So, Commander Mykola Oleshchuk was relieved of duties yesterday evening. That was announced by President Zelensky. Now, obviously the biggest story with regards to the Air Force in Ukraine was the crash of an F-16, one of only 6 that Ukraine has in the country, on Monday, and the death of a pilot, one of the pilots trained to fly Oleksiy Mez. So this is a really difficult situation for Ukraine. However, the Commander-in-Chief, Rustam Umerov, who is in Washington, at the moment presenting a list of high-profile targets they want to strike inside Russia with US-provided weapons. He spoke last night as well about the dismissal and denied that it had anything to do with the F-16 crash and said they were not connected. And he also insisted that the crash is being further investigated and they will get to the bottom of what happened exactly. It still hasn't been announced what was the fault of the crash, whether it's pilot error, whether it was technical difficulties, whether it was friendly fire. None of these have been ruled out by the Ukrainian armed forces yet. But Zelensky did come out and he has made a change at the top of the Air Force. We've now had a replacement with Lieutenant General Anatoly Krivonozhk, and he's now in charge of the Air Force, taking over from Mykola Oleshchuk. All changed in the Air Force now. No word yet on what happened to that F-16, but hopefully more will come out in the coming days and weeks with the investigation.
All right, thank you so much for the update, Oz, and do please stay safe. Appreciate it. Now, tensions are escalating in the Balkans after Kosovo's authorities shut down 5 institutions that were cooperating with the Serb ethnic minority. The Ministry of Local Administration justified the decision, citing, quote, violations of the Republic of Kosovo's constitution and laws. The U.S. Embassy in Pristina criticized the action in what experts are calling the harshest statement yet.
This is what the situation looks like now, not only in Mitrovica, but also in 3 other municipalities in northern Kosovo: Leposavic, Zvečan and Zubin Potok. The police are guarding the buildings of the parallel institutions cooperating with the local Serbs. These institutions had previously been shut down by the Kosovo government. In a statement on their social media, the Kosovo police said it was due to illegal activities but did not provide details. The move has not been well received by the U.S. Embassy in Pristina.
The US government reiterates its concern and disappointment with continuing uncoordinated actions taken by the government of Kosovo that continue to have a direct and negative effect on members of the ethnic Serb community and other minority communities in Kosovo.
But there could be more to this statement than just mere disappointment.
The U.S. Embassy was also implying that there is instrumentalization of the Kosovo police by the government, and in a way implied that, it comes as a disappointment for the U.S. Embassy, which has been not only establishing the Kosovo police, but throughout this, decades, has been investing quite a lot in modernizing the Kosovo police.
The U.S. Embassy in Kosovo is actually the player in the state. So if there is any kind of a statement such as this being released, that means that the actions of the government were certainly not in favor, not in the interest of the U.S. in the region.
Belgrade has been assisting the Serb minority since Kosovo proclaimed independence in 2008. Serbia does not recognize Kosovo as a sovereign state, calling it the autonomous province of Kosovo and Metohija.
In retaliation for recent EU penalties, Hungary is taking legal action against the bloc, seeking reimbursement for defending the European Union's external borders.
Budapest demands that the EU pay up to €2 billion to make up for the cost of Hungary erecting a border fence during the 2015 migrant crisis.
Breaking, the Hungarian government will take legal steps to have the EU contribute to the €2 billion Hungary has spent to defend the southern Schengen border against illegal immigration.
Experts believe that the move comes in retaliation for the recent financial penalties imposed on Hungary by the European Court of Justice. The ECJ declared that by making potential migrants apply for asylum outside of the EU, Hungary is failing to comply with EU asylum policies. The country now has to pay €200 million with an additional €1 million for each day of non-compliance.
If Brussels wants to continue to impose a regulation on Hungary that does not allow for the detention of migrants at the border, will offer all migrants at the Hungarian border a free and voluntary transfer to Brussels after they have complied with the European Code of Conduct.
Hungary and the EU are also engaged in a dispute over the country's decision to extend its national card scheme to include Russian and Belarusian citizens. The system enables foreign nationals to gain entry into the EU visa-free zone within just 21 days.
Despite the approaching deadline, Belgium has yet to re-nominate its current Justice Commissioner, Didier Reynders, for the new European Commission, even though most EU member states have already made their selections.
Outgoing Justice Commissioner Didier Reynders is one of the more recognizable European commissioners in the outfit of Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. He's had to deal with rule of law issues within the entire bloc, including those in Poland and Hungary. It remains to be seen if Reynders gets the nod from the Belgian government to return for the upcoming term, even when he's uncontroversial and generally well-liked in Brussels.
He was not very keen in his topic of justice, but he was very open to discuss. And I think it's very necessary for the politician to be prepared to hear another view and perspective about the topics.
Votes in favor, 401.
Friday was the deadline imposed by re-elected Commission President Ursula von der Leyen for member states to nominate their commissioners. Belgium's failure to choose a commissioner thus far has to do with the country's ongoing coalition government building. The discussion about the woman quota also plays a part in the debate. Preferably, each country is to nominate a man and a woman for the post. It could be that for that reason Belgium nominates Hadja Labib, says Sophie Inetveld, a former MEP living in Belgium.
A lot of people say, yes, if we put forward a woman, then our country will get a better portfolio. Of course, countries do not get portfolios. I find it very dangerous almost to talk about it in that sense. But it might be, therefore, that today, probably, the MR is going to put forward the name of a female candidate, and it might well be the current Foreign Minister, Mrs. Labib.
Between Labib and Reynders, the latter remains the favorite. His record on the rule of law issues in individual countries has been a mixed bag, MEPs say.
I have to say that he was not very strong. He didn't take any position and he was not really acting in this issue. Also, from my point of view, he was much more trying to find balance between the position of European Parliament and between member states.
We've worked with him a lot and he's done some good things, but there were also files where we felt he was far too reticent.
So far, it seems Belgian commissioner nomination still takes a backseat to dividing up domestic ministerial posts. It remains the question whether the Belgian government formation can speed up so the proposed commission can be presented to European Parliament on September 11th.
A night of triumph for a Polish athlete who won gold and set a new world record in women's club throw at the Paris Paralympics quickly turned into a nightmare when she was disqualified shortly after. More details in this report.
Róża Kozakowska delivered what seemed like a stunning victory, shattering her own world record with a club throw of 31.30 meters on her first attempt, beating the previous by over 2.5 meters. The joy of victory, however, quickly turned into despair. After sustaining an injury, Kozakowska was disqualified due to a violation of a rule which concerns the use of improper equipment, thus stripping her of her gold medal and revoking the record. All this began when the Brazilian team lodged the complaint regarding the size of Róża's head pillow.
This cushion does not help Róża to achieve a better result or to throw further. It only helps protect her cervical spine from damage. A year ago at the World Championships in Paris, she competed with the same cushion and faced no troubles.
The Polish Paralympic organization immediately appealed the decision, but to no avail.
The rules were clear. The cushion used by Róża was larger. The proceedings which followed the appeal lasted 2.5 hours, but in the end, the judges upheld their decision.
The Paralympic Games will come to an end next Sunday. Until then, Poland is being represented by 84 athletes. So far, the national team has won 4 medals.
And circling back to our main topic of the day, Poland is commemorating a pivotal moment in its history. the 44th anniversary of the August Agreements. These accords, signed on August 31st, 1980, between Poland's communist government and the striking workers led by Lech Wałęsa at the Gdańsk shipyard, marked the beginning of the end for communism in Eastern Europe and set the stage for Poland's eventual return to democracy. Joining us today on TVP World to discuss this historic milestone is Professor Marek Wierzbiecki from the John Paul II Catholic University of Lublin. Hello, sir, and welcome to TVP World.
Good evening, everybody.
Can you help us explain how this August Agreement influenced the eventual fall of communism in Poland?
It was a very, very important moment, a pivotal moment of Poland's history due to, first of all, the emergence of the first independent trade union that in fact was a social movement that consisted of not only the Solidarity Trade Union, but also many other smaller organizations independent of the communist authorities. And it marked also a period of legal activity of the Solidarity Trade Union for the next 16 months, which was called the Carnival of Solidarity, during which the Polish people enjoyed a much wider scope of freedom, of human and civil rights, and the control, the dominating position of the Communist Party was reduced up to minimum. And it was changed during the martial law. Martial law was imposed by the communist authorities in December 1981. But despite that fact, the communists had would never restore their dominant position in the country, and a deepening economic crisis made them seek a compromise and negotiation with the Solidarity movement. And it all led to the emergence of the legal solidarity again in 1989, as well as semi-free elections in which Solidarity won, and that was a landslide victory, and that marked the end of communism, not only in Poland, but in the rest of East Central Europe.
Right, speaking of the rest of Central and Eastern Europe, how did the Gdańsk shipyard movement inspire other similar movement in this region?
As far as I heard well, because I couldn't hear well, the solidarity in the shipyard was born due to the fact that the Gdańsk Lenin shipyard, it was named after Lenin, the Bolshevik leader, became the center of the striking actions in August 1980. That was the place in which the interfactory striking committee was set up with Lech Wałęsa at the helm as the leader. He was a natural, charismatic leader that convinced millions of the Poles that it was worth fighting with determination for freedom, despite the preponderance of the Communist Party and Poland's membership to the Soviet bloc. And this place, Gdańsk shipyard, became a symbolic place for all Polish people for the next 40 years, actually.
Right, so like you mentioned, the August Agreement is definitely a turning point for Polish internal politics. But how is it viewed in Western nations? How do they respond, particularly both on the left and the right of the political spectrum?
Yes, in the West, that was received with enthusiasm, but millions of ordinary people, by intellectuals, scientists, trade union and political activists, but of course not with such an enthusiasm by governments, which also had to think about their own interests, and they cooperated with the Soviet Union to some extent, economically, for example. But generally speaking, the solidarity was treated like something extraordinary, something specific, a huge, almost 10 million strong social movement, non-violence movement, that renounced any violence in political fight, and also a very religious movement that was a surprise for many people in the West. But that was the only such a big social movement independent of the communist authorities within the Soviet bloc at that time. And therefore, millions of people in the West supported it. It was well visible, especially after the imposition of martial law in 1981, when many people in the West, ordinary citizens as well as trade unions, social organizations, associations, used to help the Poles, sending millions of parcels with food, medicaments, clothes, because of the sharpening economic crisis in Poland, but also to help the Poles withstand the pressure of the communist regime and to continue the fight for freedom. That was a very symbolic attitude of the people in the West, but thanks to it, the Poles were able to survive the worst period after the end of martial law.
Right. Circling back to what you mentioned earlier, you described the Solidarity movement as the first independent trade movement. It's very unique in its time as it's functioning under the communist regime, where I can't really imagine any sort of independence movement that's not tied to the party being allowed. How were they functioning back at the times?
First of all, the functioning of the Solidarity movement in a communist state should be divided into two phases. The first phase was the legal activity of the Solidarity movement, which was a period which was called, as I said, the Solidarity Carnival, the period of freedom, of independence of the communist authorities, and millions of people enjoyed this unexpected scope of freedom, and they could enjoy also the observance of their human and civil rights. But that was the first phase of Solidarity's activity. During martial law, under martial law, the rights and liberties of the Polish society were reduced quite sharply. The right of association was suspended, and most organizations were suspended, including Solidarity, which was dissolved, liquidated a few months later at the end of 1982. And during this time, any links with the Solidarity movement that acted underground, was illegal, could lead to some repressions against the sympathizers of the Solidarity movement and opposition, in political opposition in Poland. But all this changed in the year 1988. That was the peak of the economic crisis. A new wave of strikes swept across Poland at that time, and the communist regime had to allow Solidarity and other opposition organizations to start negotiations with the communist authorities, with the Communist Party. And that was also a period of greater freedom, and a lot of people could openly express their own point of view regarding the situation in Poland, the performance of the communist authorities, and it all marked the end of communism. And 1989 was once again a carnival of solidarity, of freedom, but at that time, much fewer people were involved in political life, shared this enthusiasm because of their focusing on economic crisis, private life, widespread passivity. But it is important to say that the changes that took place in spring 1989 in Poland, especially the semi-free elections and the formation of the first non-communist government under Tadeusz Mazowiecki, prime minister, we can say they accelerated the political changes in other countries of East Central Europe, of the Soviet bloc, and 6 months later, the Berlin Wall collapsed. That was the main symbol of communism in Europe.
Right, definitely. A lot of hardships to overcome there, and do remind us that freedom is indeed not free. Thank you so much for your input and insight. Really appreciate it. Thanks again for being with us on TVP World.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And thank you for watching this edition of World News Tonight. I've been your host, Benjamin Lee, but for more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.